Hey everybody, Jake here with TrendSpider to go over the weekend video into the last few days of the month. And what a crazy month it's been. Just absolutely some really strong moves to the upside, some really strong moves to the downside, especially this week. And before we really get into it, I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving for those that celebrate it. And remember, we do have that Black Friday sale that is going on for another few days, 60% off any plan. So make sure to give that a shot if you want to try the free trial out. So before we dive into some individual names, I want to go over some broad market names as always, starting with SPY. And going into this week, a lot of people almost looked at this week as a gimme, right? Everyone's looking at the seasonality, thinking this week was going to just be an easy way to make some money during the holiday as we grind up on low volume to the upside. And we really didn't get that. Monday, we did start out with a really strong move, and pretty much since then, we continued to slowly move down lower into Friday when that was really just the bloodbath across the board. And so one thing that I want to point out here on SPY is really just a simple look back on the Williams percent range. So this is something that I like to use a lot of the time to just gauge how oversold or overbought we are. And you can see here with Friday's move down, we really became pretty oversold. And if you look back pretty much since our bottom in May, anytime we've had a sharp move down into this oversold area on the percent range, you can see that this has been a pretty strong bounce area. So the one thing I will point out, we did have a strong move down in September, but that really set the stage for a bigger move into the rest of the month into October. So we'll have to see if that plays out, like the last few times from May to August, or we're in for something bigger with the September look here when this really just signaled the start of the move down. So all in all, we're right at this anchored VWAP handoff from the October low. So remember, the handoff is simply just the last candle that has tested this original anchored VWAP. So you can see here, this blue box is that handoff. That's the last time that the price action touched that original candle. So you create another VWAP there, and we moved right down to that area on Friday today. So on the weekly side of things, we do just have this continued massive ascending wedge. We are starting to get into this support zone again below, and we'll have to see if it actually holds the support this time. But all in all, a very ugly weekly candle, at least going into the week ahead. Who knows? Maybe we pull something like this where we pretty much just gap into the previous candle and continue up. But that's for price action to determine. So going into the Qs, pretty similar stuff here. If you look at the anchored VWAP from the October low, and then we anchor another handoff here from this point on October 13th, you'll see here that we did not get down to this anchored VWAP handoff like we did on SPY, but we are starting to move down. And if you anchor the volume by price, you'll see a lot of volume is really holding above. So if we're measuring the volume pretty much distribution since this October low, you'll see that we're below a majority of volume here. So a lot of people are holding at a loss right now or an unrealized loss. You can see all these volume nodes above the current price, mean that this is going to act as supply if we do start to move up into the week ahead. So all in all, definitely not the strongest week, especially historically speaking, this being one of the stronger weeks of the year. Not so much this year, and this is a great case study on why you can't just look at seasonality and assume that it's going to be a strong week or a strong day of the week based on historical seasonality. It's something that should complement your technical analysis and be another tool in the toolbox. So on the weekly, we did get rejected and could not close above this 1.618 extension from the measured move that I have highlighted here from the August highs, or excuse me, the September highs to the October lows. So you can see here this blue circle to here, that's the measured move. And then this orange area is your 1.618 extension. And we just have a massive outside bar and bearish engulfing candle. You can see this body of this candle literally is engulfing the entire previous week's range. So just some really, really ugly price action. And it's really hard to be incredibly bullish going into Monday, even though Friday was a pretty big move down for SPY and the Qs. But if you look at IWM, it's not even comparable. We almost had at one point over a 5% move down intraday. And you'll see here some interesting things. So I'm actually going to make this one screen so we can see this a little better. And what I have here is I have all of these areas highlighted in green. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the relative volume indicator. And this is an indicator that essentially allows you to see visually anytime that we've really spiked above the 20-day simple moving average for volume. So anytime you've got this green shaded area, that means that we have a large volume spike. And a lot of these spikes are anywhere from 1.8 to 2 times the 20-day average volume. So notice here, if you compare the spikes here, you can see this line is just connecting the price action to the spike. This generally is a short-term bottom. Now, the short-term bottom has been anywhere from 1 day to a longer multi-week move to the upside. But if you do anchor the volume by price from this July low, you'll see that we moved right down to this anchored VWAP here. So, this is exactly where you'd expect to bounce after such a big move down. And we'll have to see how it plays out into the week ahead. But all in all, this spike definitely has triggered at least short-term bottoms over the last several months. So let's see how that plays out into the rest of the week. Now, if we go back to the split screen and look at the weekly candle, you'll see here that we actually did move down to this this trend zone. But if you anchor the volume by price from the COVID low, you'll see that we also moved down right to this volume shelf as well from the COVID low. So you can see here on the daily, I anchored it from the July low and we have a volume shelf. But if we go way back to March of 2020, we also have a volume shelf down here right around this 220 to 224 area. And that's where we supply dried up and maybe a little bit of a bid was caught with buyers stepping in. So you do have a little confluence of the support zone and the anchored volume by price volume shelf here going into the week ahead. Now, if you really want to get an idea of what the market may look like next week, just look at Bitcoin and Ethereum over the weekend. That is going to be a big tell for us to see kind of what's gonna likely happen. Bitcoin is such a risk on, risk off sentiment indicator for the markets. This is really what I look at over the weekend to see, are we going to possibly have a strong start to the week, or is it going to be pretty rough? Now, it is Friday when I made this video, so just keep that in mind that this can change quite a bit from how we start Monday off. But for now, this is looking a little rough. And on the weekly side of things, let me just get the chart optimized here. We'll pull up the Williams percent range, and you'll see here that we've got this kind of double negative divergence on the weekly, which has been the red flag for a while now. So you've got these 2 higher highs on the price, and then you have these multiple new lows here. So 1, and then you have another new lower high here on the percent range. So definitely negative divergence playing out here. And you can see that we're starting to get a little oversold, but we're still not all the way down. So who knows? We could make it all the way down to these anchored VWAPs below around 47,500. And that probably wouldn't be very strong for the markets, at least in the short term. So all in all, Bitcoin definitely not looking good. We broke the September low anchored VWAP as well. Not the strongest move going into the weekend when I'm doing this video on Friday evening. So Ethereum, this is one that actually really hasn't made the move yet, which is a little scary. You can see here that we've got the previous resistance acting as potential support. It has been previous support, and it did act as support today on Friday with this little bounce. But the main thing that I want to kind of focus on here is, one, the longer term trend zone, this weekly trend zone is just incredibly, it's almost too perfect. And so, what point are we going to actually break this line? Will it be this time? We'll just have to see. But another thing I'm really looking at is this monthly divergence, where you can see that we've got these higher highs here. And if you go to the Williams percent range, you'll see that we have these lower highs on the Williams percent range. And this did act as a pretty strong area for divergence back in April and May. So, we'll have to see how it plays out. But all in all, definitely at least maybe a little bit of a pullback. But price action is going to tell us where this is going. But this is something I would definitely keep in mind on the monthly chart. We have a few more days left in the month to see how this plays out. But just keep this in mind on Ethereum. And Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two main things I watch for kind of risk on, risk off sentiment for the equities market. So let's go into a couple individual names. We'll quickly go through these. I don't want to make this video too long. So the first one is QS. This is one that I've really been asked about quite a bit, and I've really never looked at it. But one thing that I'll mention here is if you look at the volume weighted average price from this swing high, so if we turn on this area here, and then we anchor the volume by price from this high, you'll see that we have quite a bit of volume down here. So this volume shelf starts around 27.50. We're at 30.64 for Friday's close. So you do still have some area to move down on this one too. So this would be a really hard base to get through around 26 to 27, but you still do have some room below for this to move down lower. And if you look at the anchored VWAP from the August low, that is right in line with around that 27 area too, this shaded area. So I do have a percent offset kind of capturing some of this margin of error below. And you can see that here, and that's kind of in confluence with this volume shelf below. So that is QS. We'll have to see, but not a very strong weekly candle. The next one is PTON. This is one that actually didn't do too bad Friday, but it's done absolutely horribly the last few months. So you can see here we have this just absolutely massive gap above. So this gap starts around 61. If you did want to track this gap when price is getting close to it, you can always create an alert and add that sensitivity around this line to be alerted when we start getting near it if we do continue up next week. I think a lot of this is going to depend on how the new variant, the COVID variant, plays out. And clearly, this started moving up as a function of the potential for lockdowns and things closing once again. So all in all, PTON, relatively strong day. Still not the strongest candle here, but you do have a huge gap above from that earnings. And then if you look at the weekly side of things, if you look at the all-time high here and you anchor the volume weighted average price and the volume by price, you can see here that the VWAP is way up here around 100 since this high. And then you also have this volume shelf here. So that's a lot of supply you need to get through to about 53 before you get into this pretty much price gap and this volume gap here. Overall, pretty solid weekly candle here. This was the 5th red week in a row. So keep that in mind. This thing is very overextended to the downside. And with any thought of maybe lockdowns coming back in place or closures, especially gyms, this could be a little bit of a sympathy play for that. Going into the next one, FCEL. This is one that a lot of people are watching, which is always a little concerning because you think, is this an overcrowded trade? But the thing that I'm watching for, and this is one that I'm currently in, full disclosure, one that I'm trading, you've got a few things that are interesting. One, you do have this volume shelf here from this swing low on September 13th. So you do have quite a bit of volume kind of supporting price here. And then if you pull up the Williams percent range, you'll see that we have had these areas that have signaled reversals during this uptrend. So we'll have to see if this holds. And you do have some volume supporting it here as well. So on the weekly side of things, if you look at the anchored VWAP from the September low, that anchored VWAP is right around $8. So this definitely could also go lower, and we'll just have to kind of play it by ear. For me, I would definitely be watching around the 850 area or this week's previous lows as an area to watch, maybe stopping out at least short term. But we'll just have to see how next week goes. Who knows? We could have a huge gap up on Monday if some type of good news comes out over the weekend with this new variant. The next one that we'll go over is UPST. So UPST is one that actually held pretty well as well. So if you look at UPST, also a massive gap above from earnings. So if you turn on the gap snake, you can see we have this earnings starting around 270 all the way up to around 307. And on the weekly side of things, if you look at the volume weighted average price from the December 2020 point here, which has been a pretty strong area for bounces in the past, that's down here around 175. So all in all, decent candle here, but we do have that anchored VWAP a little lower, which has been tested most times when we've been pulling back, as you can see here, here, here. And so, if we did move back down, that would put us around maybe 170 to 180. But all in all, a relatively strong candle there. Going into the next one, we will look at Tesla. Tesla is one that is really having some trouble. And the main thing that I'd focus on here is this gap below. You have the gap from around 943 all the way to around 909. on the daily chart. So keep that in mind. This is not the healthiest looking chart, especially when you have Elon Musk selling quite a few shares and raising some capital there. You can also see here that this 1.618 extension on the weekly chart is a pretty strong area for price to kind of try to get through, but it's been essentially almost a line of best fit for the last 4 weeks now. So all in all, kind of a weird setup on the weekly, not a strong daily candle by any means, and you do have the gap below to keep in mind. Next one that we will go over is FSLR, First Solar. This is another one that's interesting because you do have quite a big volume shelf here, and this one's in a pretty strong uptrend. So if you look at the volume by price from the May low, you'll see here that you have quite a bit of volume here, but if you do break down, you don't have a ton of volume until you get to around 95. So keep that in mind. This is another one that I'm actively trading due to this volume shelf, as well as just the fact that we are at this longer term support zone in this uptrend. And if you do anchor the VWAP from this May low, you'll see that there's still quite a ways below, which is around 93, 94. So this would definitely be one if this did start to break down below these previous lows, that may trigger a bigger move down to the mid-90s. But I think the overall broad market strength and health of the market is going to determine that. Next one that we'll go over is Spotify. This is one that's also looking pretty decent compared to some of the other names on Friday, especially considering it closed red or green when everything else closed red. But same thing, we've got this volume shelf here, closed right at it. We'll see if this can continue up next week, but this is kind of a lockdown play as well. Maybe more people listen to podcasts and all that if things start closing again. But all in all, if you look at the anchored VWAP from this low as well, you'll see that we pretty much closed right at this August low anchored VWAP, right around 250. So this has been an area in the past that prices have bounced off of, and we'll just have to see how that plays out moving forward. So hopefully this video is helpful, kind of getting an idea of what the markets are looking like into next week. A lot of people were caught off guard with the variant, and I think the market really just needed a reason to pull back, and I think a lot of people panicked. And on top of that, you didn't have a ton of liquidity in the market this week with it being a holiday week, a low volume week. You don't have a lot of buyers, and as soon as you get any type of increase in selling, you don't have a ton of buyers to absorb that supply from a news event like we had on Friday. So all in all, next week is definitely going to be a pretty important week to see where the markets go from here. And remember, we do have that Black Friday sale, 60% off any plan. So get your free trial. If you sign up even on Sunday and it ends on Monday, you'll be locked in for 7 days free and then still be able to get the 60% off. So hopefully this video is helpful. Everybody have a great weekend, and please like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos, and we'll see you next week.